All right. Appreciate Liz and the Sales Right team. We're now going to bring up our friends on the panels today, all of whom were very quick to agree to speak tonight. This doesn't have the same effect as having them sit beside me, but it's pretty cool. Like you're next. So I'm really excited to welcome the panelists here today. We're going to have an awesome time. I'm going to start by asking them to do a quick introduction of themselves. And I didn't tell them that I would do that. Partially because I forgot, but afterwards, as I was thinking about it, I'm like, well, we're at a sales event. Let's see how good their pitches are. So I'm gonna hand it off, and I'll dictate the order because that keeps things fun and engaging. But I'd be remiss if I didn't start with my good friend Peter. Pete. So Pete, please introduce yourself to the panel, who you are, and just a quick intro about your background.
Sure. My name is Pete Kazanjy. I'm coming to you live from San Francisco, and I'm really excited to be here because Kenny's been trying to get me to come to a sales TO event, and it turns out Toronto's a little distant from San Francisco, so this is kind of a silver lining to kind of a social lockdown. I'm the founder of Modern Sales. It's the world's largest sales operations leadership enablement community. A lot of the folks who are we have a large population in Toronto, so a lot of the folks who are here tonight might be members of Modern Sales. If you're not, check it out at modernsaleshq.com. I'm also the founder of Atrium. We make sales performance analysis software. It's my second SaaS company. My previous one, Talentbin, was a recruiting software company that was acquired by Monster Worldwide about 4 years ago. After which I ended up writing a book on sales on startup sales for founders called Founding Sales. It's completely it's available in its entirety online at foundingsales.com. So for people who are trying to figure out sales and never been a seller before, it's a great resource for you. So that's me. Thanks for having me, Kenny.
Thanks, Pete. I've read that book and I reference it consistently, and it makes me sound like a magician. So that's my competitive advantage. And if there's any tip you leave here tonight, it's get that book and just skim through it every single day.
I thought it was your hair.
That helps too. But sometimes on Zoom when we're not showing it, I got to use my words, and so that'll help. Cool. Thank you. All right. Next, I want to introduce Daniella. Daniella, please introduce yourself to the crowd.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks for coming out tonight. And thanks for having me, Kenny. So my name is Daniella Bellaire. I work for Shopify. I lead North American sales for Shopify Retail. And I spent the last 10 years in sales. I'm sales through and through. I've done door-to-door sales, then got into exec roles, building and scaling teams in startup and some larger companies. And super pumped on the topic tonight, as we are a company that just officially made the decision to go digital by default all in. So super pumped to just hear everyone's experiences and share a lot of them.
Cool. And Danielle, show us that amazing piece you're working with tonight.
Oh, yeah. No.
There we go. Look at that,
New
folks.
Investment.
If you think I'm in your ear, Daniella will be in your ear. The quality of that is great. That's Shopify stipend, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, totally.
Right? Cool. All right. Big company problems. Kyle, please take it away. Introduce yourself to the team. To the
hey, everybody. Yeah, thanks, Kenny, for having me. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining tonight. My name is Kyle Coleman. I lead the growth and enablement team at Clari, which is kind of a non-traditional combination of teams that are kind of sort of marketing, but kind of sort of sales, but not officially one or the other. So we have on our growth team, we have demand generation, field marketing, sales development, and sales enablement. So all of the teams that are primarily responsible for both creating and accelerating new business revenue, a pretty interesting combination. I've been at Clari for about a year and a half now, a little bit less. And prior to Clari, I was at a company called Looker, a data analytics startup based out in California. I was a sixth employee at Looker, grew the SDR team over the course of 6 years up to about 65 people globally, as the company grew to about 800 people, about 100 million in revenue, and then was acquired by Google in 2019. So hoping to recreate some of that magic here at Clari.
Amazing. Thank you. I think, Looker, what was the acquisition? 3.2 billion?
2.6.
2.6. Who cares, right? 2.6, 3.2, 4.9.
Maybe Canadian. There's a conversion rate. I don't know.
I think that's 100 billion Canadian already. Cool. All right. Thanks, Kyle. Appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of the tricks and tips that made Liquor successful. And I think we've got our first request tonight for Pete's son to join the panel. So he'll be joining us shortly at intermission. All right. Next up, we've got Bocar. Bocar, please take it away and introduce yourself.
Hey, Kenny. Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Bocar here. I am currently co-founder at a stealth mode sales tech company. You can DM me to find out a little bit more about it. Before that, similar to Kenny, I actually started really early at Hootsuite, so pre-revenue. I was actually sales rep number one that they hired there. I stayed at the company for about 8 years in sales leadership roles, mostly just looking at building new teams and new markets. So, excited to talk about that today and the context of remote. And my last role at the company was actually to move to Toronto, where I mostly live now, and run the Toronto office and North America East region. So thanks for having me and looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. That's not something you hear of today. Sales rep staying in a company for 8 years. So that's it's going to be good to dig into your experiences and understand what went well, what didn't go so well, and what you're drawing from to your new company now. So big round of applause, I guess, virtually for the panelists tonight. Thank you so much. Yeah, this is my first time, so I'll slowly get the commentary and the one-liners up and running. One thing before we jump into the questions is if you guys have questions, let's make this a little bit interactive. Throw them into the chat. I'll do my best to stop every once in a while and take an awesome question from the audience. Asterisk, if they're not good, I won't use them. But then we'll have Q&A time in half an hour, 40 minutes. So let's jump right into things. I always like to start with an icebreaker, at least virtually. And this is the first one. So this is the first icebreaker question I'm ever asking. And I guess I'm going to start with a really relevant one, which is, what's been your favorite work from home purchase you've made in the last 90 days? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be professional. It can be personal related. I see a lot of nodding heads, and Daniella seems to really like the question. So I'm going to kick it off to you, Daniella.
Is it a microphone?
Yeah. No, it's actually not. I was just thinking, I'm jingling my eyebrows, but you can't see them. And I purchased a desk treadmill. And it's ridiculous. It's you see me like motoring when I'm on calls, and people are like, "What are you doing over there?" And then I tell them and I show them, and it's actually a really great conversation starter. So I've purchased one of those, and I'm loving it. And I can do it sitting or standing, and it's been a game changer.
That's a pretty good one. It's not the response I expected. Yeah. I was expecting a Peloton, as everyone is getting, but
I live in Toronto. There's no money for a Peloton here.
That's very true. That's very true. All right, Kyle, you're up next.
Yeah, I can show mine. Danielle, you're embarrassing me because mine is just like a little balance board that I stand on.
Nice.
And I'm at my stand-up desk just so I can kind of shift my weight around. And I thought it was kind of fun, but you just completely stole the show. So I'm actually legitimately ashamed of myself right now.
One of my reps got a treadmill. Well, he got one and then he broke it. So Carson, he's like 6'3", like 250. So the first one wasn't beefy enough, and then he took my co-founder's like fancy pants, like beefy one, and now it's working great. Very popular.
There you go. I was expecting a dog. As soon as he went down to lift something, I'm like, no, a puppy, an 8-week-old puppy. So no dice, but
this alligator.
Yeah. Bocar, what about you?
I was on a call this morning, so I haven't actually purchased it yet. So I don't know whether it should be an answer, but I just did this morning. We'll see whenever I receive it. But I was on a call this morning with somebody in the Bay Area, and they had behind them a double-sided whiteboard. So it was a whiteboard on one side and a green screen on the other.
Oh.
I just thought it was just like the most amazing thing. So I got her to send me the link to Amazon. I can drop it right here on the chat box later, but I can't wait to get it.
Ideally, if you have a referral code, then you should drop that link for it. But
right.
Absolutely. I'm sure people will love that. Pete, awesome. You're up.
Mine's way more boring than everybody else's. I'm not as creative as you all. So I I used to have a Bodum French press, the like 3-cup one, and partway through like the first month of work from home, I was just like powering through it. So I splurged and I got myself like the double size one. It's great.
Folks,
more coffee.
That is a
mega French press.
San Francisco in response. In Toronto, we go for Tim's. So the need for a French press.
Oh, right. No. San Francisco would be like a pour over. At least like this is utilitarian. Make it in the morning and just drink it down all day long.
Fair enough. Awesome. So let's jump right into the thick of things. Of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about remote first and work from home. We will dive into a few other topics here today. I don't want to bore you with the same thing that you may have been reading over and over again, but we've got some really good questions. And then we're going to dive into some other aspects of sales that I think are downstream effects of work from home, or potentially just changing our thinking as we think about this new world and how it's going to affect the traditional aspect of sales.
Right.
But I kind of want to get a sense of how has it changed so far, and specifically from a hiring standpoint, because I think that's been the thing that's affected the most amount of people, not necessarily in a negative way, but in a positive way. I know people now that are opening their eyes to opportunities all over in the States or overseas, or now we're hiring people overseas. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Daniella, because obviously Shopify is hiring infinitely, and I'm sure she's got a lot of examples that she can share, not even from your team as well, Daniella, but broadly around the sales team. How has hiring shifted, or the mentality around hiring?
Yeah, for sure. So, as I mentioned on the call, which it's public, so I'm sure everybody knows, but Shopify went digital by default is the term we're using. And essentially it means, the expectation is that everybody works from home. It's so fascinating. I grew up in like a rich sales culture where it was like, you're going to work from home, and, are you going to be productive at home? And no, you need to come in the office. The culture's coming in the office. That's how you get work done. And so it's been a mental mind, for me leading an org and for the team, right? Because we're social beings and we want to be together. So how we're thinking about talent is really fascinating. Traditionally, I'm based in Toronto. Shopify is headquartered out of Ottawa, but our retail sales team is here in Toronto. And really our pool was Toronto. That's our talent pool. And maybe we'd veer out and go to Ottawa or Montreal, but now we've now changed it. Actually, if you go to our website, we've also changed the verbiage. So we now are hiring for the Americas. So my talent pool has just, 10x, 20x, whatever you want to call it. And so now we're thinking, I basically took my 2020 plan, ripped it up, threw it in the garbage, and thought to myself, if I could hire from anywhere in the Americas, where would I hire? Where do we want to get people connected with the right types of merchants, and where can we have a big impact and a big brand? And so that's how we're thinking about it. We're officially launching hiring in the Americas. We'll still focus predominantly, I think, in Canada, and then do some hires in the US once, COVID passes and things open up a little bit. But we're really excited about that because, like I said, we were really just focused on this core geo, which is Toronto, and doing purely inside sales from this headquarters.
Someone have a differing opinion? Does someone feel like that's not going to be the norm, and 3 months or 6 months from now, we'll just see ourselves going back to the office and we'll be hiring local only and go back to the traditional sense of kind of just how we've been operating previous COVID?
I think everyone's just kind of jumped forward to the future. Like there are already a lot of people who are already there. There's a guy this is a San Francisco sentence right here for you, Kenny. This is a guy I'm a Twitter friends with. He used to run North American sales. Actually, he still runs North American sales for PlanGrid. They make, construction software, and they had a distributed sales organization. Now, part of it was because the reps would want to go on site to construction sites, but not all the time, maybe once every 2 weeks or whatever. It wasn't like they were an outside sales, they had to be in geo. And so Kevin and the team they just got good at it. Mm-hmm. And it was just a competitive advantage for them for the longest time. And I think the folks that kind of got good at that stuff ahead of time are kind of now shaking their fist at coronavirus, being like, God damn it. Everybody got hip to our secret. So, I mean, No, I think Daniella is totally right. Like, if we all inadvertently had to rip the Band-Aid off at the same time. And now people are like, oh, this isn't actually all that bad, and it enables a bunch of other stuff. Now, it requires a bunch of new muscles that previously weren't there, but that's what we're going to see people getting good at over the next 24 months.
Yeah, so that's exactly my next point, which is curious. So it seems like everyone is aligned, right, with a shift to remote first or digital first. Even if we go back to some normalcy, I imagine there'll still be a presence of being flexible with work environments, not going back to the office. So how do you measure people? How do you, oftentimes it was learning by osmosis. It wasn't so intentional, right? It was like you sit beside the people you work beside and you learn from them and you get onboarded by them. And maybe there's a little bit of a boot camp. And now I'm talking specifically for the smaller stage companies, right? Not the companies that have a 2-week boot camp and they teach you everything and they have their playbooks. But now you're a smaller company. You're between 10 to 150 employees and you don't have the resources to onboard people. How are you going to determine success for a rep?
Can I actually add one quick thing to the previous question? And I'm going to leave that as a way to answer this question as well. I think one thing that we tend to not think about, I guess, is how we're all thinking about how remote work is going to affect us on the sales side, but there's equally big changes happening on the customer side, right? And they're now remote themselves, and they're now having to figure out how to do purchases differently and how to do approvals differently. So some of the interesting insights I've actually heard were not things that I was expecting, but things that were more around how they're changing their sales teams as a result of how their customers are purchasing differently. So as an example, I heard I was talking to a marketing tech company in the Valley, as an example, in the Bay Area. And they used to have a bit of a land and expand model where they used to sell 25K deals. They can get away with selling to a marketing director. And now that COVID happens and, there's a new reality, purchase thresholds are lower, right? So they're finding themselves having to now sell to VPs of marketing instead of directors. And they effectively are changing their team structure in that they used to have more junior reps landing the accounts and then experienced account managers selling. Now they're realizing that it takes as much effort to sell a 25K deal as it takes to sell a 75K deal. So now it's all, accounting based. So I think one thing that, when you're thinking about metrics and thinking about how you're going to measure your reps in this new world, I just thought I'd kind of mention this because I've talked to a lot of sales leaders, and the biggest insight that I get from them is how it affects their customers, and then how they're almost like relooking at metrics again to start understanding if our customers are going to be buying this way. Here are the set of metrics that we're actually going to look at because this is our new reality. Then set some expectations and goals around them, and then actually run their business slightly differently, because that's kind of one thing that comes to mind. But we've got Pete here, who's the king of metrics, and I'm sure that you'll have some comments there. But I just thought I'd throw that in.
Always like to leave a little bit of silence there. Okay, cool. I think that makes sense. And I totally agree with that. I think first and foremost, you can only sell to an informed buyer, and you have to be informed as well of how people are purchasing or considering purchasing products and understand roughly how decisions are going to be made. On the converse, though, is tech somewhat insulated from all this, right? Like there's been some layoffs and there's been some slowdowns, but at the other side of things, companies are still hiring, right? Like is everyone here, Kyle, is Clari hiring? Still?
On the technical side, engineering and product and things like that. And it's a few on the revenue side, but not nearly what the pre-COVID plans were.
Fair. Pete, are you still hiring?
Yeah, I mean, we're hiring a ton of account executives right now, but I mean, I think, so yeah, is it Bocar? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. When you have a crazy last name like mine, you kind of get sensitive to making sure that you pronounce people's names right. Yeah, like I think it's not, I mean, essentially what we've got going on is people's sales motions are being impacted, not necessarily by like a pandemic, but like the knock-on effects of the pandemic, which is like an economic disruption. And so I think what we've seen in our customer base and our prospect base is like, yeah, if you're exposed to something like, you know, the restaurant industry or like the travel industry or something like that, like, you know, like exactly, like across the board, you're going to see impact. Now, that being said, you're going to see some situations where people are having tailwinds, like virtualization companies. So like a good example of this would be construction is impacted right now, but actually within construction, like there's companies that do allow for like digital walkthroughs of job sites. Like, you know, you hold up your phone and like record the thing and whatever, like, and those guys are slaying right now because they're essentially like Zoom for walkthroughs. So I think it really kind of depends on who you sell to. And so like the one thing you can do is like, as Bocar was saying, like, well, maybe that changes your sales motion. So now our threshold for selling is higher. So we have to change who we're focusing, like who our ICP is there and who the personas are that we're targeting. Moreover, and I know that Clari's been doing a lot of work on this. Like you got to pressure test your pipeline to make sure it's not like full of a bunch of like BS. Like, oh yeah, look at all these forecast ops that are in the travel industry. Womp 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 womp. And so I think that like they're like, it really depends. And so there's an importance for people to like kind of be eyes wide open and kind of instrument how things are changing and then pivot appropriately.
That's a great point. So on that vein around pivoting and not just when engaging with customers, but internally, I want to get a sense of some of the initial shifts that teams have made to help once again be more intentional around some of the things that used to be we took for granted. One-on-one sessions, listening to recordings together, right? In a quick small office meeting where you can listen to someone's calls. How have your team meetings shift? And I'm going to pose this question to Kyle, specifically for the SDRs. SDRs tend to be earlier in their career. They tend to require a lot more assistance and coaching and support, needing to develop, right? And they're always looking for that feedback. I think the best reps are always looking to learn. So what changes, or have you not had to make changes thus far, are you doing to support the reps, making sure that they're still getting the same level of learning and feedback that they thirst, desire to improve in their profession?
Yeah, it's a good question, Kenny. When we started working from home sometime 30 years ago in the middle of March, I think we over-rotated to a certain extent, and we kind of overcorrected with respect to how much camaraderie we had to try and manufacture. We tried to create this sense of the sales floor, and we're like, okay, every day we're going to have coffee meetings, and then we're going to have happy hours all these times. And we're going to do all hands and department meetings and all this, and everybody's going to be super locked in. It's going to be great. And we were just exhausting everybody. They were like, we need to do our jobs, like pump the brakes a little bit. And so we've corrected, and we're like, okay, maybe not coffee every day, but a couple days a week. And it's optional. If you want to come, cool. We're going to do a call office hours now where everybody hops on a Zoom and we kind of do a quasi call blitz and we talk it through live, or email writing sessions. I think that probably the biggest change, so to kind of tie a bow there, I have a newfound respect, or even deeper respect, for individual autonomy as it relates to the day-to-day and the process. I think a lot of managers, when times are tough, they tighten the reins and they say, this is the process and we need more of this process that's worked for us in the past. But what we've done is pretty much the complete opposite, where we loosen the reins. And we literally had an SDR freedom week where we were like, metrics don't matter. We don't care what you do this week. Just do your job however you think you're going to find the most success. And then everybody, did their thing and reported out on what they learned. And that then informed the process changes that we made. And so giving people that individual autonomy is super important and really empowering to show them that you trust them. And so I would highly recommend that, because, I've been doing this for a number of years now. I have no idea what's going to work when there's a global pandemic. Like, I was not around slinging software during the Spanish
last
flu.
time.
Yeah. So who am I to say? Like, I'm standing on sand when I'm trying to give people this kind of advice. And so allowing people to do their own thing has been helpful. But there needs to be managerial help. And so we have become, I think, probably even more structured around managerial call reviews, meeting reviews, meeting note reviews, like the types of things, especially if it's any sort of handoff between teams or any sort of feedback loop cross-functionally. We've gone out of our way to make sure that we're creating that, because that's what you miss largely in the hallway conversations. You don't pass the demand gen person in the hallway and talk about the campaign that you just launched, or you don't pass that AE in the lunchroom and talk about the meeting that you set up for them. So those are the types of things that we've really focused on. And I've been talking for 30 minutes now, so I will stop.
Kenny, can I ask a quick question? I'm curious. I'm mostly just working with a product team because we're pretty early stage. So fortunately, I'm not managing a sales team right now. But I've got this, I think, or one of my assumptions is that bad habits are amplified when things become remote. Do you guys think that's a fair statement?
Amplified in what way?
Well, I'm just thinking if I've actually had some conversations about this, but just curious to hear you guys' opinion. When you, for example, are not, as a sales leader, if you've got sales managers that are not good communicators, as an example, in person, then they're terrible communicators when things are remote, right? If you didn't have a cadence and a structure, formal structure around coaching before this happened, you're probably, in the shits right now, right? Yeah. So to say, are you guys finding any of that? I'm just curious, because that's where my mind went first was, you've got issues, they're just going to be amplified by everybody being remote.
I think that's probably right. And the bigger thing that I've seen is one of our managers on the SDR team, for example, is an excellent verbal communicator, like really, really good. And he struggles with written communication in general. You know, he's been doing dials. He was a radio DJ for a while. Like, verbal communication is his thing. And so not having that person right next to him that he could just turn to and talk to has hurt a little bit. And so we've had to pay special attention to sharpening his skills around nonverbal or written communication, I should say, so that when he sends a Slack message, it's not really curt and like, hey, maybe pepper in an emoji every now and again, because you kind of sound like a jerk. So it's been that kind of thing, but I could definitely see where you're coming from, Bocar, where those kind of weaknesses are definitely amplified.
Yeah.
I think what we'll find too is everything you do is in the same idea there, concept, Bocar, but internally everything, and even externally, everything is emphasized a little bit more. If you have to attend a demo or a sales call with someone virtually, salespeople are notorious for just jumping in, throwing a deck in, and kind of walking people through. But if it is not to a T, if you don't have that agenda planned, if you don't do your research ahead of time, I think now more than ever, people are conscious about how they're spending their time, who they're talking to, and more than ever, the presentations you provide will resemble the brand, right? And it'll resemble how people think of you. And it's not just this whole concept of, don't call during COVID. It is, how do you want to be perceived in the eyes of your buyers? Do you want to come with something that looks a little bit more professional? And it doesn't have to be a $20,000 deck. But once again, do your homework, be prepared, basic things like that. So with that in mind, have there been any fundamental changes to how you guys are approaching your conversations with customers? Are you just tailoring messages differently, or have you noticed that how you're selling is different? Is there anything that comes to mind as you think through, how do we want to approach people? How do we want to engage and resonate with people? So I'm going to kind of stop there because I'm rambling, but I would love to hear if any of that hit a mark with anything that you guys are thinking of or you're working on, specifically to inform some of the reps on the calls today. What if their company's not helping them? What can they do?
Yeah. I would love to hear how this is happening with Shopify, since you guys sell to retail like bricks and mortar, and that's like a pretty spicy market right now. So I'd love to understand how that's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So definitely all of that resonates so hard with what we've been going through. So COVID-19 hit, we sell to brick and mortar retailers all over the world. And obviously as doors closed, business dried right up. So for us, it was, how do we pivot and reposition our entire positioning and what we're selling and how we're selling it? And so that was a bit of an overhaul. So fortunate for us, we have an e-commerce product. So even though I'm selling a point of sale system to a retailer, for us, it was a quick pivot of saying, okay, if we know they're suffering right now because they can't make in-person sales, how do we actually help them? So I think just thinking through a problem of if they can't do what they intended to do with your product, how can you help them pivot if you can? That's the first thing. So we leaned into that really hard and built all new positioning to say, join Shopify for the omni-channel experience, help your business survive, help your business weather the storm. That was the messaging. And we've got a BDR team who does outreach. We also have an inbound funnel, and it's always lead with empathy. And, some of the foundational sales practices, lead with empathy, use merchant success stories. So for us, it was, hey, we talked to Tom in New York down the street. He's dealing with what you're dealing with. Here's how we helped him. That's the open rate line of, we know somebody just like you who you probably know, and they're dealing with the same thing. Here's how we help them. And so that was a really easy, I wouldn't say easy, but a light lift for us to do. And so, I think lead with empathy first and foremost, understand what that PDC or whoever the person is you're trying to sell to, understand what the pain is of what they're going through, and make sure whatever message you're delivering resonates, because the last thing you want is a mass cadence going out through Salesloft or outreach and it totally pisses them off and it's mass produced. And we had a couple of those, and that's okay. We learn from it. And you get the stories of merchants calling you saying in tears, you literally helped me survive this. And 90% of our in-store business went away. And we recovered 94% of that online, which was really cool to see. So over a 6-month period. So I would say cater the messaging, lead with empathy for sure.
I've been hearing a lot. I totally agree with everything you said, Daniella. And we tried to give this guidance to our SDR teams. I spoke with other SDR teams and salespeople that were kind of confused. They're like, well, what is empathy? And so I've been giving that a lot of thought. And you're right, it's like Sales 101, but it takes some re-explaining sometimes. And the way that I've sort of tried to explain it is that, yes, empathy is the focus, but the word that I've been latching onto a bit more is strategy. Like, you really need to have a strategic reason for reaching out. You need to understand, to your point, the person that you're reaching out to, what matters to them specifically now about this environment. You need to understand the account that you're reaching out to, what their strategic growth initiatives are, or how they're going to stay afloat during this time. And then you need to take your solution and pivot it to those things. So what Clari has done is we realized that pretty much every company, every B2B company that we would serve, completely lost confidence in their forecasting ability. And so we changed our marketing message pretty much overnight to be all about revenue confidence. Here is how you can restore confidence in your pipeline. And this is tool agnostic. Like, yes, you can do this using Clari, but we want you to survive. So you could do this with, brute force Salesforce and Excel spreadsheets, or, a BI tool or whatever. But here's a formula for you to do this and do this well. And that type of messaging really seemed to resonate and build a lot of credibility and really show that we were legitimately empathetic. We understand what they were going through, and we really just wanted to help them survive and thrive. So I think all of what you said, plus a little bit more.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're opportunistic right now and you're a salesperson listening in, you should Google the top industries that are performing very well and growing at a rapid pace right now. And you should dive into those verticals. Yes. And there's I'll post a great article from New York Times, but I shared this with my team. And it's like, listen, we only sell to retail, but do we sell to outdoor equipment retail? Do we sell to are they making home goods? And so we saw a huge uptick in our business. Home goods boosted because people are working from home. So lean into that outbound team. And that's where we saw a ton of success. So interesting to think about who are the verticals that are really pivoting and being successful and double down on those.
And I think there's the inverse of that as well, which is if someone's business is just absolutely eviscerated and you don't have a solution for it, right? Like in Daniella's case, in Shopify's case, it's like, hey, cool, I know your doors are closed. This is why it was like within certain categories you could have success, like Chow Now, for instance. You have all these restaurants who all of a sudden are like, cool, we are only now like ghost kitchens. So I guess we really got to have control of our own delivery story. But like doing a refresh of your target accounts. So Danielle's pointing out, these are the ones to target. Conversely, these are the ones not to target. So use Atrium as an example. We make sales performance analysis software. And so, sending sales organizations home to work from home really puts pressure on instrumentation. So presumably every sales organization should be really pumped up on this. Well, not necessarily. Like if you're firing your entire sales organization, like if you're, in the travel industry and you're firing the entire sales organization, like, hey, we actually don't have a sales org that we sent home. We let them all go. Showing up in their inbox and being like, hey, I bet you sent your sales team home. Would you like to instrument them better? That's going to fall pretty flat and make your brand look like crap. But if you show up to people who are, having success and you are helping to solve their problem, it's going to resonate. I think we had this big flame war in the modern sales, forum where someone is like, oh my God, you shouldn't be calling people on their cell phones versus, on the pandemic. I could imagine if you were calling into a retail store, on somebody's cell phone and being like, hey, if you're like some of our other customers, you probably have been pretty heavily impacted. Have you thought about a digital storefront? I don't think they're going to care that you call them on their cell phone. I think they're going to be like, wonderful, Daniella. Yes, you have my attention, but you got to target well.
One bucket I would add. So I would agree with everything that's been said. Look at who you're targeting and who not to target. I think one thing to keep in mind as well is that, especially when it comes to B2B SaaS, a bulk of your revenue actually comes from your existing customers. And I know we haven't really talked much about customer success today, but I would kind of do the same exercise for your existing customer base and understand who you're going to keep and who you're going to upsell and who you're probably going to lose. And in terms of conversations and what to do to get ready, I actually believe that we probably haven't seen the full impact of this on SaaS companies yet. I think Q4 is probably going to be when, contracts are going to be, coming out for renewals and people are going to think about it a little harder. But ultimately, I think, have a plan right now for your customers and make sure you're having conversations with them and train your reps to have cancellation conversations because those are going to happen.
Yes. That's great advice.
Yeah, Mark Roberge and OJ from Asana had this great role play the other day. I'll try to find it. Yeah, here it is on Twitter. So Mark Roberge, former CRO of HubSpot. Here, I'm going to drop it in the chat. So he had this awesome role play with OJ from Asana. This is like a great talk track for exactly that. That situation where somebody's trying to cancel. You're trying to figure out how to how can I extend you out? Can I, et cetera, et cetera. I just dropped it in the chat. It was fantastic.
And if managers or VPs haven't brought this up to reps, take it upon yourself to bring it up to your manager or VP, right? I mean, people should be ahead of the curve here, but not being prepared to have that discussion is not an excuse. Get ahead of the curve. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. And so, reps are, what can I do? What can I do now? How can I improve? Take it upon yourself, take some initiative and start informing yourself. There's tons of content online that Pete's posting, but also start these conversations internally if they aren't already happening and help refine these skills because I think it's a great point. We are going to move to questions from the audience. So we will do that momentarily as questions come in, but I do want to ask a couple quick questions. Maybe I want to bring something up specifically that Daniella said earlier today, which is Shopify is doing some weird shit. And anytime I hear someone say that,
Kenny, way to throw me under the bus.
Oh man! Oh, Pete asked a good question. I'll ask after this. The problem is no one's cut my hair, Pete. That's the problem.
I don't have that problem.
But I'm curious to hear, Daniella, what is some of that? You're testing, right? You're hypothesizing now. So what's going on that caused my ears to perk up?
Totally. Yeah. So, what I said to Kenny was we're just doing some really weird shit over at Shopify. And that is, in the sense of it's great weird. I'm the type of salesperson that I love really awesome problems to solve as a salesperson and sales leader. So this move to a fully, really think about it. And I called it out earlier on the call, but when I was in sales, doing direct sales 10, 12 years ago, it was all about being in the office. It was all about the energy and having drinks and connecting and doing team stuff. And the office was it, or you were on the road. And to now, really think and dig deep and say, okay, actually, we're going to build a fully remote, totally dispersed, world-class sales team. We really had to think quick and pivot. So as a company, some of the cool things we're thinking about and not fully baked, classic Shopify style, we make a big announcement and it's not all baked, and that's okay.
We didn't know that.
Totally fine. Yeah. So
Daniella, that's called an iterative approach.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, it's on purpose.
Yeah, totally on purpose. So we're basically the TLDR. The short form of this is, the short term, we can hire and you can work anywhere in the Americas. So for example, I live in Toronto. I'm going to go and I'm going to spend a month at my cottage, and I'm going to work from my cottage that's, in Michigan. And I'm going to go do all these things. I'm going to travel when restrictions open up. Maybe I'm going to go to Bali, wherever I want to go. And I'm going to work and I'm going to do my job, and it's going to be amazing. And I don't have to be tied to office centricity, which is what we're calling it. We don't have to be tied to a physical space. We will create community. We will create opportunities to get together socially and in a hub format. So all 10 or 12 of our offices around the world are being retrofitted now to be community hubs. So you won't walk in and you won't go to a desk. You'll cool. Show up and maybe you'll hotspot, or you'll go to a social gathering area where you meet other people, and it's more community based. And so that is a completely different way of thinking. And everybody, we're really excited. And so I get to be part of, what does digital by default mean for our sales org? And I'm building that out. So a lot of asynchronous work. So I think we called this out earlier, it's like the trust piece. I have to trust that I'm hiring really great people that are going to do their job and, have a sense of autonomy, but really feel like they want to drive for results. And we're going to do a lot of asynchronous work. So we're going to clear our calendars, and we're not going to meet for every little thing. Mm-hmm. And we've done a lot of that. So similar to Kyle, when we first worked from home, it's like, okay, book a 1-hour coaching call with every one of your reps, book a call to just connect because we need to connect, book a call for drinks, book all these random Google and Zoom meetings so we could do all these things. And it exhausted everybody. Yeah. And it was totally opposite of what we wanted. And then we realized everybody is performing way better than they did when we were in the office. We're having unprecedented growth as a company and our sales org. And, people just need room, trust, and a bit of structure, and they're going to thrive. And so less meetings is our thing, asynchronous work, opportunity for deep work. So we don't do meetings at all on Wednesdays. And I don't know if you guys heard, but we just announced over the summer, this is such a bad thing to say on a call of salespeople. They're going to shame me. But we're actually giving the entire company Fridays off for the rest of the summer. So we're actually going to condense digital by default, 4 days of work, and you only are able to get into meetings 3 of those days if you want to. So wow. It's a wildly different world than we're used to, for sure.
It's interesting you say that, because our issue has been getting people to stop working. Not that they're not working or working hard enough. It's the lines are so blurred that it's really hard not to just open your computer back up at 8 p.m. and just bang out. And then all of a sudden it's 10:30 and you're like, shit, what just happened? So I love that. I'm going to go back to our e-staff and see if they can pass that policy as well.
I think that policy is going to end as soon as you have a quarter end that finishes on a Friday.
that will be the one Friday.
Yeah, everybody's in on the one Friday.
All I could think about that whole time was, shit, Shopify is going to do what WeWork couldn't. Right? Build a far better community hub around the world. So cool. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions, because I have another question. Then I'm going to go to, sorry, people. I had another question I want to bring up. And that's this, I think there's been a shift already over the past 5-10 years to move to a self-serve model for software, this concept of PQL, this model whereby people could interact with your product, be self-serve, sign up, pay with a credit card, and never interact with a salesperson. I think given the climate, this is going to be even something that appears more often, and the reliance on this will increase, and companies wanting to create more of a self-service process will only grow. Does that mean that the sales profession will diminish, like the amount of people that are in it? Do you think that'll have an impact? How do you balance the two? I'm seeing some quick nods, so I'm curious to understand why you think that.
Those are head shakes, not nods, Kenny.
Yeah,
So
those are salespeople out of work.
Shake.
Yeah.
I think he's another Canadian. Wes Bush wrote a phenomenal book called product led. God, what is it? The product led handbook? I want to say.
Growth marketing. Yeah. Wes Bush. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What? So he was a Hootsuite guy or Vidyard guy. I'm trying to remember. Anyway, phenomenal book. Product led sales or product led growth. I forget what it is. Just Google it. But I think the important thing with product led, the thing that folks need to remember is that, your PQL is just a lead, right? It's not the transaction. And woe betide the organization that thinks that accidentally thinks that their lead gen is actually their business. Because the graveyard is littered with those companies. Yesware is Yesware and not Outreach and SalesLoft, and unfortunately lost the sales engagement market because they mistook a self-service sale for actually being a business. Dropbox is not nearly the size of organization that it should be as compared to a Slack or a Zoom, again, because they never got their sales motion, their PQL driven sales motion dialed in. Now, in fairness, the Slacks and Zooms and everybody else of the world has gotten to look at the Dropboxes and the Yeswares and what have you, and kind of learn from their mistakes. But generally speaking, those sales motions they're not unassisted. The initial transaction is potentially unassisted. But there's definitely a human involved at some point of the process.
I would agree with that. I'd say it's at the end of the day, it's not about how you want to sell your products. It's about how your customers want to buy, right? And I think ultimately it's when you think about things like price point and complexity of your product and the type of relationship that you're building. Twilio, Stripe, these are companies that sell to tech buyers. That's okay, right?
Sure.
Slack, Zoom, there's some network effects there, right? And I know it sounds weird coming from Hootsuite, known as the freemium company, but I can tell you right now, people didn't upgrade from our free product to an enterprise product. You actually have to sell them, right? Yep. So that really was, to Pete's point, don't confuse a lead generation kind of motion with an actual, sales motion. That said, there are motions where you could actually do that, but I think it's going to have to be on the SMB or mid-market size for the most part, and not on the enterprise side.
I think that's right. Don't lose sight of the fact that people still buy from people.
Yeah.
As long as that's still happening and there aren't robots on the other end making purchase decisions, sales people are not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But don't get it twisted. A product led in is phenomenal. If you can compress the time to utility, probably I was using Yesware versus Outreach and SalesLoft. Probably a good example of this would be Mixmax, right? Who has a very easy in, so you can self-adopt, but then they still have a sales team, right? So they get proliferation within an organization. Maybe they got little pods of $49.99 a month or what have you. The same is true with us. At Atrium, we've invested a ton of engineering effort in order to make it such that an organization could just light up their data within 5 or 10 minutes and get to utility. Because being able to show them versus do jazz hands with a demo and a deck and what have you, that's super valuable. That said, now you're going to be selling on their on their data or on their implementation. So somebody's already implemented in Hootsuite, already implemented in Slack, and then some corporate account executives like, okay, cool, let's go hand in hand together and go and talk to the chief security officer so we can actually keep this as opposed to getting ripped out of the organization.
Yeah. And PQL to me, like from my previous role, is a great opportunity to get like a market swell where you can really capture a lot of the SMB folks coming in. And then two things. One, 80% of your revenue is coming from 20% of your merchants or customers most of the time. And so that's going to keep salespeople in business as that market stays relevant. And then also that PQL, who is that small business, you're gating, features in your product, that's a great opportunity for you to grow them and grow their wallet share and potentially have a sales rep reach out to them and you create upsell, cross-sell opportunity. And so I think I'm not afraid of it. I think it's a great way to build a massive base. Like you see a ton of different businesses doing that. And then ultimately they just need to make the jump to the enterprise. That's the tough part, or the mid-market. Does the product stretch and go up market? And then, you add a sales team, or is the sales team selling vaporware, which I've also been a part of something like that. We won't go into it.
Everybody opens Daniella's LinkedIn profile and they're like, oh, which company was this?
I think OpenView has like an annual SaaS report that they put out on this.
Yep.
Where they talk about this. And I think they say that, what was the number? They say that if you're product led, you grow faster up to 10 million in revenue, but I think it's just kind of a scale thing. But I'll just say, not to shit on it. I just don't think that it's for everybody and it's not a sales motion.
Love it. There's been a quick question, and I think this comes up in almost every event, which is favorite tools. I think everyone has experience with great tools. We've got a couple of folks on the call today who've got some experience with sales tools themselves. So I'm going to add a caveat to this question and say it can't be your own tool. And so I'm going to go rapid fire quickly. And what are some of the sales tools? And you know what? It doesn't necessarily, I don't want to limit it to just like a sales tech tool, right? That help you sell, that help you manage your team. So I'm going to open the floor up. Kyle, I'll start with you. What are a couple of the tools that really help you manage your business or you see help accelerate your sales team?
Okay. I'm not allowed to say Clari, which counts as a plug. So I still got it in there anyway.
Nice work.
LinkedIn Sales Navigator is 100% indispensable for SDR teams, for top of funnel work. I don't believe in purchasing lead lists for a single cent. You could not convince me to buy a lead list at this point in my life for really any reason. So LinkedIn Sales Nav, I think, is completely necessary equipment. And then Gong. I think Gong is just phenomenal. The ability to not have to be everywhere live with your team, to be able to create scorecards, to standardize the way that coaching is done, to build it into onboarding, to do all the things that you need to do to allow the best practices to bubble to the surface, keep people accountable, allow reps to actually pay attention on calls because they don't have to be scribbling down every note, everything they hear. So Gong or Chorus, I think, is becoming more and more important now.
What happened to Conrad, who used to have people record videos of them with their tech stack?
Sales stack.
Yeah. We should get that back.
I think he started a company, so he's got like a day job. I want to say.
Yeah, that was probably it's cool to have though. I think I'd love to see how Kyle, you talk through how you use Gong with the scorecards and whatnot. Cool, appreciate that. Daniella, what about you?
So my tried and trues, always Salesforce, Benchmark, Gong. I won't go into it because Kyle did them justice, but huge fan, especially as we're now remote and a lot of my team is quite junior. So huge coaching tool. I would say two new tools that we have signed up on but haven't gone live, but I've used at other companies. So Troops. Troops is a workflow automation tool to help more effectively use Salesforce. So that's really exciting for us to get into that. And another tool, we're really investing heavily on remote training and enablement, clearly. So Level Jump is an awesome enablement and training tool. It's built right into Salesforce. It's guided onboarding, training, certification, the whole kit and caboodle. So both of those are going to go live with us in the next month or so.
Cool. Level Jump, great Toronto-based company. We've had David at an event before. We're supposed to have Scott from Troops before. So awesome to see that. Pete, you're up.
I think these are some phenomenal ones that have been mentioned so far. So actually, my background is not in sales. My background is in product marketing and product management before I went into sales. And so I've got a soft spot for great marketing, especially like great product marketing and swag. And so one of my favorite tools is Sendoso. So Sendoso allows you to send physical objects, I guess, physical things, stuff, just as easily as you send email from SalesLoft or Outreach or what have you. Like you can rack things like, so, you know, I'm big into fun swag and stuff like that. And so it's super phenomenal for just top of funnel, mid funnel touches, things like that. So we use it like crazy for, for demo behaviors and things like that. We use it for mid funnel touches because we have like, you know, a bunch of materials, fun stuff like, you know, coffee cups or books, phone chargers, whatever. And one of the ASP of your software is like we're in a different situation than maybe Daniella. Like if the ASP of your software is like $25K, then sending somebody like, you know, $30 a book doesn't matter, right? It's fantastic. And it really accelerates the top of the funnel rather than kind of like paying through the nose for Google AdWords or, you know, LinkedIn ads or whatever, or it just makes your SDRs way more efficient too, because of their conversion rates on like, hey, would you like a copy of like cracking the sales management code? You know, people are like, sure, I'd love to. I'd love that. You know, I'll trade you 30 minutes for a disco call for, you know, some awesome stuff. So anyway, Sendoso makes it really super easy to do that.
I would say in the COVID era, what we've been doing with Sendoso, which is by far like one of my top 5 tools as well, is we're sending images of the Amazon thing that we would send them if they were in the office, but giving them an Amazon gift card.
That's
and
awesome.
then we're taking that thing and we're transitioning to Clari's value prop in it. So it's far more personalized and it's not creepy because you're not like, hey, what's your home address?
Yeah. And people like it, you know, they really appreciate it. And you can hook it into like your marketing automation system as well to make it just like super easy. It's great for SDRs.
Yep. I was going to mention a lot of the same tools, but what I was going to say is I love, Pete, how you didn't say Atrium, yet you figured out a way to lift up your mug and show us Atrium on the other side. You know, it was great.
Oh, yeah. Why do you think I needed to get, you know, the big French press, right?
That was very smooth. I commend you on that.
Cool. So just want to recap. We're 8:20 on the mark, and I want to kind of just quickly skim through what we've spoken about today for the people that are on their way out. So one of the things I loved about this chat, Kyle mentioned in the beginning, the concept of Freedom Week. Give people discretion and autonomy to test things out and try things. I think that's phenomenal, and learn from them. We also spoke about things like reviewing how your customers are buying now. You guys should, you know, if you haven't spent time to sit down and see how customers are changing their buying process, how they're thinking about things, interviewing a customer and documenting a new customer lifecycle, you need to get going. Refresh your target accounts. Not only do you want to look at who you're selling, but who you're not selling to. The last thing you want to do is send some sort of insensitive message to someone asking them to buy a tool for their team that no longer exists. And then you want to consistently also not just look at net new, but also your existing customers. So that's important. Make sure you refresh yourself on cancellation conversations. What are your clauses in your contracts? If you're a salesperson and you don't know how someone can cancel their product, you should figure out how they can cancel their product if they absolutely need to. But furthermore, how to redirect that conversation and what you guys can do. Wes Bush, product-led growth. Take a look at that. Mark Roberge on how to cancel conversations. Take a look at that. Targeted messaging. Don't just send stuff out through Outreach or SalesLoft. Actually be a bit more, once again, sensitive with your messaging. And then OpenView SaaS report was also mentioned. And then lastly, Gong, LinkedIn, Salesforce, Troops, Level Jump, Sendoso. Check some of those tools out. Lastly, I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. Amazing that we're able to get so many people to come out. such an evening, beautiful night in Toronto, at least. So I want to thank everyone for spending some time with us. And then the panelists, all of you said yes very quickly, some on short notice. So I'm really, really thankful that you're all able to make it, spend some time with us, even though we have what's going on in the world today. Is who knows what's going to happen tomorrow. So appreciate the time, everyone. Thank you so much. Please head over to the networking area if you want to connect. Head over to sessions if you want to hear from SalesRight. And have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kenny. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.